My name is Heather Hoyle, and I'm with the Office of Indian Policy. I'd like to start off by welcoming Lonnie Greninger, Vice Chair of Jamestown and IPAC Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Ait squatchy nasjayacha, si amnasjayacha. Good morning, friends and relatives. Thank you so much for honoring us with your presence today. This is important work that we're doing, and so I'm very excited that there are so many of us here from all kinds of work to be able to serve our common population, our Indian country. And it's important work because this is the generational work. So this is sacred work. Oh, I apologize. There's my dog. This is sacred work, and so I don't want any of us to take this lightly and to remember that we're doing an important job. And because this is sacred work, this is important work, we want to be able to start off this summit in a good way. And so I'm going to go ahead and share a prayer song with you all this morning. This is called the Saya, or the Grandmother Song. This was written by Joe Price of Nuskayet Nuskayam, or the Port Gamble S'Klallam tribe. And I have permission to sing this song as he shared this song with my particular family here at Jamestown. And the words go, I love my grandmother. Ho, ho, hey, ho, 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 hey, ho. Whoa, ho, hey, ho, ho, hey, hey, ho. Whoa, ho, hey, ho, 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 hey, ho. Whoa, ho, hey, ho, ho, hey, hey, ho. Whoa, ho, hey, ho, 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 hey, ho. Whoa, ho, hey, ho, ho, hey, hey, ho. Whoa, ho, hey, ho, 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 hey, ho. Whoa, ho, hey, ho, ho, hey, hey, ho. Whoa, ho, e-town say, whoa, ho, e-town say, whoa, ho, e-town say, whoa, ho, e-town say, whoa, ho, hey, ho, 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 hey, ho. Whoa, ho, hey, ho, ho, hey, hey, ho. Whoa, ho, hey, ho, 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 hey, ho. Whoa, ho, hey, ho, ho, hey, hey, ho. Whoa, ho, hey, ho, 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 hey, ho. Whoa, ho, hey, ho, ho, hey, hey, ho. Whoa, ho, hey, ho, 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 hey, ho. Whoa, ho, hey, ho, ho, hey, hey, ho. Huntington Nisjayacha, thank you so much. Now that we've started off in a good way, I'd like to pass it over to Acting Secretary of DSHS, Don Klinsman. Thank you, everyone.
Good morning, and thank you, Lonnie. I'm honored to be welcoming everyone to the Aging and Long-Term Services Administration's Spring Tribal Summit. It's a pleasure to be with you today, albeit virtually, but it is a pleasure. Before I begin, I want to recognize our previous Secretary, Cheryl Strange, who this week began the enormous challenge of running Washington State's Department of Corrections. As you know, Cheryl has a tremendous place in her heart for our state's tribes, and she certainly takes that with her to the Department of Corrections. We will all miss her, and it is my honor and my pleasure to step into the role of Acting Secretary for the department. I intend to continue the same direction Cheryl was leading the department in its partnership and in its work with tribal governments and communities. We have all experienced a harrowing 14 months. There have been losses, injustices, and discriminations across the country. For some in today's audience, you are all too familiar with the lack of access and to the barriers to full participation. For others, there may have been an increased awareness of privilege. DSHS has been working to increase diversity and inclusion in our administrations, our offices, and our facilities statewide. We will continue to work with each other and those we serve by embracing our differences and by expanding contracting opportunities and diversifying our workforce. One of those opportunities is the Federal American Rescue Act funds. Although the timeline to use the funds is very short, DSHS is confident that we can work with tribal governments and communities to put those dollars to good use. During this pandemic, DSHS has continued moving forward and adapted to the current environment in a number of ways. Following Governor Inslee's direction, most DSHS staff have continued to work virtually, while essential services, such as adult protective services and food assistance applications, are available both in person as well as virtually. We have learned a lot during this last year. DSHS has worked closely with all our administrations, as well with the Department of Health and the Healthcare Authority, to coordinate and provide comprehensive responses. In a few moments, we will be able to hear how the Nisqually tribe, the Samish Nation, and the Lummi Nation continue to support their members and the lessons that they learned during this time. The state of Washington and the tribes of Washington have often been praised by the other tribal governments and other states for our strong relationship that is based on government-to-government respect. I'm honored that DSHS has been part of developing that through our history of working with tribal governments and organizations. Last fall, we spoke about the new Tribal Leaders Social Services Council. The preliminary stages have been initiated. We have moved from a quarterly update reporting meeting to the new government-to-government framework. Important issues are being discussed and focus is given to creating new models and mechanisms to make improvements in our communities. At our first meeting in April, discussions centered on WACARES, the new long-term service trust. We explored cost-based reimbursements for long-term services. We also discussed the expansion of tribal SNAP eligibility determinations. The Tribal Leaders Social Services Council model brings together the governor's office, tribal leaders, and other departments to inform our policies and practices and our future. Tomorrow and Friday, Bill Moss, the Assistant Secretary from our Aging and Long-Term Services, Long-Term Supports Administration, will share what's been happening in his administration. And I will now take a few minutes just to share what some of our other offices, administrations in DSHS are currently doing and what they will be doing to support elders, to support individuals with disabilities, as well as supporting caregivers and their families. The Office of Indian Policy continues to schedule IPAC and 701 meetings virtually. During the legislative session, they did a great job of keeping information flowing. They have been instrumental in arranging meetings with tribal councils and with staff, with key staff, I should say. Key areas that have been addressed are legislation concerning WACARES, the Long-Term Services Trust, and new legislation concerning background checks. When we are finally able to return to offices, the Office of Indian Policy will adjust its approach to best serve everyone's needs. The Economic Services Administration developed methods to better serve families in crisis via electronic and online communication. They did this across all of the services and programs under their management. Even though offices were initially closed, they diligently continued providing needed services, such as emergency food supplements, ensuring recipients of food assistance are receiving the maximum amount of household for their household size. Injunction of the new able-bodied adults without dependents waiver rules. All counties in Washington are temporarily granted good cause to not be terminated for non-participation in work-like activities. Pandemic EBT food benefits are available to families with children in grades K through 12 who are eligible for schools' free or reduced price meal programs. Assistance continues to be available while some schools are closed due to COVID-19. Disaster cash assistance. Assistance is available to all Washington families and people without children who meet the income and resource limits of the program and who are not eligible for other cash programs. For the Behavioral Health Administration, which includes DSHS treatment facilities, as the pandemic crisis took place, many measures had to be developed to counteract the COVID cases while ensuring there was no more occurrences inside our facilities. BHA, along with other DSHS administrations, staffed and operated crisis control centers when the outbreak was raging. These efforts involved a combined effort of the governor's office and other state agencies to address the crisis and to keep people safe. A dedicated tribal liaison position was created during this time. You will hear more about that on Thursday when their new liaison shares her vision for the administration. The Developmental Disabilities Administration conducted outreach during the COVID-19 pandemic and as a result received many requests for services. As with other administrations, DDA closed lobbies, but quickly moved their contact and outreach to utilize online and teleconferencing. They also implemented measures to ensure safety of clients and staff within their residential rehabilitation centers that the administration operates. I want to thank the DSHS Indian Policy Advisory Committee, the Governor's Office of Indian Affairs, the American Indian Health Commission, and the Seattle Indian Health Board for their continued leadership during the COVID-19 crisis. Although we hope all these changes have helped communities around Washington during the crisis, we know your tribal governments, organizations, and volunteers continue to be on the front lines in your communities. I want to acknowledge all of the work you and your tribes have done to protect your tribal members, particularly your elders, and in many instances, your surrounding non-tribal communities through actions like tribes sharing excess vaccines with their surrounding community members. Today, we get to look forward to hearing more about how the Nisqually tribe, the Samish Nation, and the Lummi Nation worked to meet the needs of their tribes during the pandemic. We will also hear from Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board and Dr. Chris Rhodes about the newest information and the newest training for individuals with Alzheimer's and dementia and for their caregivers. Lastly, we will hear from both the Washington State and federal Veterans Administrations about their services and what they're doing.